Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So excited to have you here. And for those of you who have been following me, you know that I post videos all about building a business and building a family at the same time. Today's video is going to be more focused on the building a family part of my life, and specifically around my decision to freeze my eggs. So many of y'all who watched my manifesting how to manifest your man video were super curious about how I came to the decision to freeze my eggs to preserve my fertility. So I wanted to go into detail in that today in today's video, and mainly just talk to you about, what egg freezing is, how much it costs, what you as a woman should know about your body and about your fertility if you plan to have kids, and then just emotionally what the egg freezing process was like, so that if you're thinking about going through this process, this could be super helpful for you. And even if you're not thinking about going through it, it just can be really informative and educational, and just kind of know what option is out there if maybe you want to do it down the road, or something like that. So all right, so I am 36 years old, and I froze my eggs when I was 34 years old, so about 2 years ago. I started thinking about freezing my eggs very early on, actually. When I was about 29, 30 years old, I thought about freezing my eggs because getting married just seemed like it was not going to happen anytime soon. And so just to give you guys a little bit of background of what freezing your eggs is basically you go through a process, which I'll elaborate in just a second, in which eggs are extracted from your ovaries, good, healthy, fertile eggs, and they're essentially just put on ice. And so whenever you are ready to have a baby and you have a life partner, or if you want to be a single mom and you pick out sperm, a reproductive endocrinologist can take those eggs, I would say on ice, but they're not really like on ice. They are cryopreserved though. They can essentially thaw them out. They can fertilize them with the sperm from your husband, significant other, whoever you would like to be your baby daddy. And they can create an embryo, and an embryo is a fertilized egg in basically like the first step of becoming pregnant. So they would create an embryo in a petri dish. That's why they call them test tube babies. And then they would implant that embryo in your uterus, and Mother Nature still has to do her magic, because that embryo will then implant into the lining of your uterus, and if all goes well, you will grow and develop the baby and carry the baby to delivery. So that's kind of what happens. But egg freezing is essentially a process that is the first part of IVF. And so IVF is in vitro fertilization, where essentially you go through this process of taking a bunch of drugs, and they stimulate you with a bunch of shots and other hormones. And I'll make it a whole nother video, you guys, on the injections process and the egg retrieval process. I'll make another video for that. So don't worry. If you're really curious, I'll go into depth. So basically you go through all these hormones. And what these hormones do is that they make you mature a lot of eggs in one cycle. And naturally, we as women, we have one queen egg that gets the biggest and is the most mature every cycle, every period. And so basically every period, one egg drops every ovulation. So, and it usually alternates. One drops from your right ovary 1 month, one drops from your left ovary the next month, one drops from your right ovary, and every month it just kind of happens like that. So every month you do have a chance of getting pregnant if you have intercourse at the time of ovulation and a sperm meets the egg at that point in time. But typically you just drop one egg. When you do an egg freezing process or any IVF, they try to get more eggs. And in egg freezing, they try to get even more eggs than they would in IVF. So sometimes they're going to stimulate you with even more hormones, because you're not trying to get pregnant right then. You're trying to just get as many mature, healthy eggs as possible in a healthy way, extracted and then put on ice. So essentially, I went through the whole IVF process alone, but we just kind of stopped after I did all the injections, took the drugs, went and had, a very minor surgery where they take the eggs out of your ovaries once they're mature, and then they just freeze them. And then the process stops there. And then every year I pay a storage fee to store my eggs. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how much everything costs, but that's pretty much what the egg freezing process is. And the reason why it's so valuable and good for women is the day that you freeze those eggs are of that quality and of that age forever until you use them. So I froze my eggs when I was 34. And if I want to go use them now as a 36-year-old, I'm essentially going to have a higher quality egg because it was a younger egg. And this is where biology is not on our side, ladies, but our fertility declines with age. Not only do the number of eggs that we have in our ovaries decline, but the quality of the eggs that are in our ovaries also declines. So the younger the egg, the healthier the egg. And so that's why it's so recommended that women, try to conceive or really, really, really think about family planning before the age of 35, or freeze your eggs before you're 35, because there's a very stark cutoff in your fertility that happens at the age of 35. And so my doctor educated me on this when I was, in my 20s. So I was always kind of aware of it and I was thinking about it. But just, tactically speaking, there's one big drop in fertility that happens around the age of 30. But the big drop that's a little more significant happens at 35. So it's just a lot harder to get pregnant after the age of 35 versus in your late 20s, early 30s. And this is something that is just I feel not fair in the age of the modern woman, because if you're like me and you're a high achieving woman and you have started your own business, or you have all these things that you want to do, you may not be ready to have a baby at 30 or at 32 or at 33 or at 34 for that matter. Or maybe you just haven't met the right person yet. And it just really sucks to feel like time is not on your side. And I am a huge believer in the law of attraction and abundance. And I just refuse to believe that time is not on my side. So I just really love the idea of freezing my eggs, because I feel like it just gave me more time, and it didn't make me feel this sense of urgency of the fertility drop off at 35, because my eggs are going to be 34 forever. And so that was a huge motivation for me. Another big motivation was just me getting more educated about women's fertility, because y'all, we don't talk about this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And you learn your basic stuff in sex ed and middle school or something like that, but no one's really talking about biology and how to get pregnant and what the likelihood of getting pregnant is and what's going on with your fertility. So as I just started educating myself more and honestly watching more YouTube, talking to my doctors, etc., I just felt I was more empowered to take control over my personal goal, which was to get married and have babies. I felt so helpless before I got educated. I felt everything was just out of my control. Well, hopefully if I meet some guy and we just happen to get married and happen to have a baby, this fairy tale will happen. But you know what? I am a strong woman and I don't expect anyone to save me. I'm going to save myself, right? So it just made me feel so empowered to take the power back into my own hands. But one key thing that I learned that I want everyone who watches this video, I don't care if you're 25 or 35, that I want you to know about yourself is and if you desire to have kids, I want you to know what your AMH level is. This stands for anti-Mullerian hormone. I think that's the right way you say it. But essentially, this is a blood test that you can take, and it's a hormone that kind of tells you how many eggs you have left, how fertile you are. And it's typically on a scale, or it is on a scale from 1 to 4. And in order to even be eligible to do IVF or any fertility treatment or like have a chance of having a baby, you really need to at least have a AMH level of a 1. Like it has to be at least 1, okay? And then 4 is like the most fertile, right? So 1 to 4, know what that is. There's even like a new company, I think called Moderna or Moderna. I can't think of it, but there's that even has like a home health test that you can do this on your own. And then like next time you just go have your annual pap smear or whatever, ask your doctor to run this test for you. And I think if you're under 35, it may not be covered by your insurance, but just see, it's worth paying for it to know. So when I was 30, in 2015, I went to a fertility doctor and I got my AMH level tested because I was thinking about freezing my eggs then. And mind you, the context of this year, it was 2015. I just had my 30th birthday. You know, all of us girls, 30th birthday. Oh, I'm single. Oh my God, I'm 30 and single. I was going through one of those things. And I was thinking about freezing my eggs, but I had just quit my job. I had just started my company, Grit Fitness, and I was basically in this big conundrum of this $15,000 that I had in my savings, and if I was gonna use it to freeze my eggs or really like go all in and try to start this business. So it was like this big decision I had to make. So I went to fertility doctor, I got my AMH tested, and my number was 3.51, which was like really high. I was like doing a happy dance. I'm like, I'm fertile, y'all. I'm so fertile, I'm so fertile. And just to give y'all a little bit of context, like I have my computer up and I'll read y'all some numbers that I found, but like typical AMH levels for women, so under 30 is typically like a 2.9. And here I was 30 years old and I was at a 3.5. So I was like really, really, really happy. 30 to 34 is around a 2.4, 35 to 37, 2.03, and then 38 to 40 is a 1.5. So that just kind of gives you some context and kind of shows like just with age alone, it doesn't matter how healthy you are. It doesn't really matter, how well you eat, how much you work out. Like this is just human nature and a little bit of genetics, but our fertility just declines with age, and you can just see how that AMH level declines. So when I went to the fertility doctor and I found out that my AMH level was 3.5, I kind of just prayed in that moment and I said, God, that's pretty high, like above average. I'm just going to take the risk and not freeze my eggs right now and just go all in on my business. And so I spent that $15,000 on, new equipment for my business, marketing, all of that. And I just invested in Grit Fitness. And that was in 2015. And I'm so glad that I made that decision right then because you have to spend money to make money. And if I had not made those investments at the time that I did, I don't know if I'd be where I am right now in terms of my business. But I just like to bring this point home to women because, if I wasn't empowered with that information about my body and about my fertility, I may not have made the best decision for me in that point in my life, And so really think about what you want out of life. Do you want to start a business? Do you want to go to graduate school? Do you want to travel? Do you want to live in a different city for a few years before you settle down? Just think about all these life goals that you have and don't settle. If there's something that you really want to do, but you also really want to have kids, just be aware of your fertility, be aware of how much egg freezing costs, and just know that there are options out there for you to have it all. Like you can have it all. You may not have it all at the same time, and that's okay, but you can have it all. So once again, if you're watching this video and you do not know your AMH level, you have an official commission from me to go find out what your AMH level is, okay? That is super, 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 super important, okay? So 2015, I decided not to freeze my eggs because my AMH was 3.51. I was starting this new business. And even with starting the new business, I was kind of dating a guy that I thought may come of something, and that was a bad decision because you should never not preserve your fertility because you think something might work out. You should take care of you first. So, lesson learned. But I went ahead and decided not to invest the money in freezing my eggs, but investing it in the business. And then I also made a personal goal to work my butt off in my business and, do some side hustling with like influencer stuff and rebuild up my savings, my 15,000 within the next couple of years so that I could freeze my eggs in the next few years. And, that's the other thing that I had to contemplate. I was working for myself now. I didn't have the health insurance I used to have back when I was a consultant. And so just the financial burden was so real, I had a lot of my friends who are working for Google and like YouTube and like big companies, like they paid for them to freeze their eggs. So that's another thing too. Like, go figure out if your company has a benefits package that will cover egg freezing. And if they do it. Like, why not? Do it, especially if you want to have kids. You never know what's going to happen in the future. And if you have an insurance policy that will cover egg freezing, like this is just me being an evangelist right now, freeze your eggs. Honestly, I think all women should freeze their eggs. It would just give us so much more opportunity to like kick more butt in the corporate world, be more CEOs, take over in politics. When we all know girls are we're just the best leaders. We just are. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so anyway, I'm pulling up my patient portal from my fertility doctor real quick, just because I want to share with y'all, probably TMI, but oh well. This is why I like YouTube, because I always go to YouTube to talk about things or to go watch videos about things that I've had too much shame about discussing with other people, So I'm just going to like tell y'all all my fertility information. So did not freeze my eggs in 2015. Let's see, when did I go back to the fertility doctor? I went back to the fertility doctor right after my 34th birthday. And so, 33rd birthday, I think. 33rd, 34th. I don't know. I can't do math. But anyway, I went in October of 2018. So about 3 years later, I went back to the fertility doctor to explore freezing my eggs because I still was not dating anyone seriously. My business was growing, which was great. And I was having so much fun with that, but I still had a deep desire to have a family, to be married, and to be a mom. And I knew that I was getting closer and closer to 35, where that big drop in fertility happens. So I went back to the fertility doctor, here, AMH. It was actually July of 2018. And my AMH level had dropped to 1.59. You guys, I remember I had to teach a fitness class that night and I just like couldn't even focus. I was just so depressed, so upset, like kicking myself, thinking that, I made the wrong decision, not freezing my eggs when I was 30 and my AMH was 3.51. Just thinking like I made a horrible decision. And so, it dropped so much from 3.51 to 1.59 in like 3.5 years, right? And that just shows like biology and this fertility decline is like so real. So my doctor called me and he said, "Are you on birth control?" And I said, "Yeah, I have been on birth control." And he said, "Well, birth control really like suppresses your ovaries. And I just can't believe that your fertility dropped that much that soon. So what I want you to do is, wait another month off of birth control and then come back and let me test you again. Because if you do want to freeze your eggs, in order for the egg freezing to be really good and for us to get like a good amount of eggs to really store," he's like, "we really want to see that number above a 2. Like 2 really being like the minimum, that we can do it at 1.59, but if you're going to spend all this money and freeze your eggs, like you want to get as many eggs as possible, right? So if your ovaries are just kind of suppressed from birth control, like let's just wait a little bit and see." So I said, okay. So I waited a month. I went back in August, had them test me again, and my anti-Müllerian hormone went up to 2.02. So for those of you who are on birth control and you want to get pregnant, I encourage you to get off birth control. Like, get off of birth control, because I've had some friends who said that like it took them months and months and months to get pregnant because their ovaries were so suppressed. So I know they say that birth control doesn't impact your fertility, but I think the time to conceive, it really can impact, because just in 1 month, I saw how my AMH level was 1.59, which is like a lower fertility just from being on birth control, and then went up to 2.02 in a month of just getting off of birth control. So get off birth control, okay? So I went ahead and froze my eggs then with the AMH level of 2.02, and it went really, really, really well. I went through the full IVF process of injections for, about a week. I went through the egg retrieval where they took the eggs out, and they took out 19 eggs. And that's like really good in terms of, how many eggs you would want to get from an egg freezing versus from an IVF. And so typically what my doctor said is that they try to get 8 mature eggs to result in 1 pregnancy, because a lot has to happen where, the eggs need to be of a certain quality. They need to be fertilized. Once they get fertilized, they need to get to full, healthy embryo implant. And like some eggs, they just kind of die along the way. They don't make it that far. So they really need to start with like 8 good eggs for 1 pregnancy. So with 19 eggs that they got out of my ovaries, 15 of them were mature. So you can't fertilize or freeze an immature egg. It won't work, I guess. So 15 of those eggs were mature. And so I have 15 eggs that are frozen with my doctor right now at 36 years old. And so, if Zach and I need to use those down the road for baby 2, baby 3, hopefully not for baby number 1, then at least we have that option to thaw out those eggs, fertilize them with Zach's sperm, and then have a baby that way. So I joke with him and say I made a $15,000 investment in our marriage, so you can add $15,000 onto the price of my wedding ring. I'm kidding, you guys, I'm joking. But at that point in time, I had built my savings back up. That's actually not totally true. I hadn't built my savings totally back up, so I had to finance some of it, and I paid for some of it, and finally got that paid off. But it was so worth the investment. So I froze 15 eggs when I was 35. 33. I was 33 or 34. I think I was 33. I don't know. But it was 3 years. I think it was 34. So I froze those eggs, and now I pay. So whenever you go through the egg freezing process, you pay a one-time fee, or my doctor did, to freeze the eggs and for 1 year of storage. And now I pay $700 a year to keep the eggs frozen. That's the storage fee. So the second year it was like $400, and then third, fourth, fifth year, every year I pay $700 a year to keep the eggs frozen. That's Pearl. Pearl, stop growling. I think it's so weird that my dog just sits up here and like looks out the window and growls at people walking by. Like, they can't hear you, but anyway. Okay, so now just to further reiterate the impact of birth control, Zach and I have now gone back to the fertility doctor because we are going through the IUI process. We've been trying to get pregnant for about 8 months. And if you're over the age of 35, after 6 months, if you don't get pregnant, sorry, my dog is like barking. After 6, Pearl, stop it. Stop, relax, sister. After about 6 months, if you don't get pregnant, you can go see a fertility doctor, and most insurance, that's like the coverage point. If you're below 35, they make you wait a year before they'll let you go see a fertility doctor. But we'd been trying for about 8 months, so we decided to go to the fertility doctor, and they retested my AMH again. And so when I went to the fertility doctor September of 2020, my AMH was 2.13, which was actually higher than it was when I froze my eggs 2 years ago. So that just shows that like the birth control really suppresses, because there's no way my fertility can be higher now at the age of 36 than it was at the age of 34 or 33, you know? So that just shows the impact of birth control. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about, the tactical process of freezing my eggs, but now I just want to share like emotionally what it was like. So do not think that this is going to be a process that you can just like put on your calendar, boss up, make your appointments and go through it. Okay. This was one of the most emotional, stressful processes I've ever been through for a few reasons. Number one, I had to like grieve this image and this vision and this dream that I had in my head that I was going to be married with babies before the age of 35. When I was in my early 20s or whatever, I always just assumed I'd be married and have kids before 35, like duh. And the fact that like that wasn't going to happen, it was almost like I had to have like a funeral for that like idea. Like it wasn't going to happen before 35. It was going to happen. I believe that it's going to happen, but it just wasn't going to happen on my timeline. And, I talked about surrender a lot in the Manifesting Your Man video, but I had to kind of just, breathe and be like, okay, this is where I am. I'm 34, 33. I don't know why I can't remember how old I was. 34, 33. I'm not seeing anyone seriously. I know I want to have kids. So this is something that I need to do, and it's just, I felt some shame going through that process, like feeling like, I wasn't good enough. What the hell's wrong with me? Feeling like a spinster, here I am, mid 30s, single, like the fact that I even had to go through that process, I was kind of ashamed of, and so talking about it, thank goodness at my job, my company, we have a really, really strong, empowering group of women. And I was able to talk to a few ladies who I'm really close with and let them know I was going through this process. And they were just so supportive. Some had already been through IVF. One came to my apartment and insisted on helping me with injections. And I thought she was being very overbearing, but I just thank God that she did, because when you get all of those needles and drugs, it is like a drug addict playpen. You're like, what the heck do I do with these syringes? And it's just so overbearing. And it's something that you just really don't want to go through alone. So I just want to say that, because if you are thinking about freezing your eggs, now is the time to make sure that you have that one person who can be your support person to kind of go through it with you. And for me, it was one of my really good friends from the fitness studio and my mom. So my mom like went with me on my egg retrieval day. She kind of went through everything with me, but I really, really, really discourage you from going through this alone, because it is so much more emotional than you think that it is, all right? Secondly, you're on all these hormones that make you absolutely crazy, right? Like it's just so much estrogen and all this stuff. So I told everyone who works for me, all of my staff and instructors, I was like, look, no one is allowed to quit from now till the time I'm done with this, because I may not be the Brit that you know and love, and please don't hold anything against me, but no one's allowed to quit in this time period. Got it? Cool. And so that's another big emotional part of it. It costs a lot of money. So, if you are not rich and do not have a rich uncle, which I did not, and every dollar really matters, you're just kind of stressed about like, should I have spent this much money? Like, is this the right thing to do? And then, it's just, it's a really weird process to give yourself shots. And I don't know if you've given yourself shots before, but I was terrified to give myself shots. And my mom, bless her heart, she was so helpful and so willing to help me. But with the shots, she was almost in tears. She's like, honey, I really hope you can do this, because I don't think I'm strong enough to give you the shots. And she was just as freaked out with the shots as I was. But let me just say, if you are going to go through this process, the shots are not a big deal at all. Like, the mental idea I had of what the shots would be like was so much worse than they actually were. It's not that bad. They don't hurt that bad. You just put a little ice pack on your belly, numb it for a minute, just do it. And I'll make a whole nother video about injections. So for all of those reasons, it is just a very emotional process. And leading up to it, I actually got very sick. And I think the reason I got very sick was because I was really scared and emotional and sad about, having to do this on my own. And also work was crazy. I was opening another fitness studio. I was just going through a lot. I was about to have another fibroid surgery. That's another video. I've always struggled with fibroids on my uterus. I just had too much going on at once. And I ended up getting Bell's palsy, Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, and my face was paralyzed for 4 months. So when I went into the doctor to have my egg retrieval, like my face was stuck and frozen. It was just like the craziest thing. So anyway, I just want to say that if you are going to go through the egg freezing process, invest in your self-care. Acupuncture, therapy, massages, sleep. Like, take care of yourself, rest, and make sure that like your mental health is in a good space, because it's naturally going to bring a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety to you. So after the egg freezing process, and after, everything went well, the doctor told me that there was, 15 eggs frozen, and, the deed had been done. It was like a sigh of relief. It was just like a breath of fresh air, because I just felt like I have insurance now. If I met someone 2 years from now, 10 years from now, at least I was going to have eggs that were like good quality 33, 34-year-old eggs that we could, attempt to get pregnant with, in the event that I didn't have any good eggs left if I'm 40 or 42. And you hear of cases all the time where people get pregnant naturally at 40, 42, but it really is the exception and it's not the rule. And those are kind of like the diamonds in the rough. So it's important just to kind of, plan for it. But I will say it was just like an act of surrender. I just felt so much more at peace with my life. And just as luck would have it, I froze my eggs. I'm looking at this calendar in October. In October. I met Zach in November of 2018. So exactly 1 month later, after I spent the $15,000 and froze my eggs, I met my husband. And, we got engaged within 5-6 months, and then we got married in December of the next year. So in 1 year, we got married. And people are always like, do you regret freezing your eggs? Oh my gosh, you met your husband. Like, you shouldn't have even done that. And the answer is no. I do not regret freezing my eggs, because Zach and I want to have, at least 3 kids. We're more mature parents. So that means we'll be having, kids maybe in our 40s. And, we may need to use those eggs. And also, we just love to travel. And we didn't want to feel rushed in the conception process, the TTC process. So we've really gotten to enjoy our first year of marriage, traveling, during our engagement year, and this year buying a house, renovating our house, and just kind of, enjoying the process. And yes, we are trying to conceive, but I feel like I don't feel super stressed out about it. I watch a lot of girls on YouTube, and my heart just breaks for them, who are going through the TTC journey. And it's like, every cycle is like a big deal. Like, oh my God, it's gotta work, it's gotta work. And like, yes, I do want it to work, but like, if it doesn't, I feel more at peace because I know that I froze my eggs. So I'm just really, really grateful for the, the financial ability to do it, for the education, for friends who also did it, who encouraged me to do it. And I hope that, now I'm a friend to you and I'm encouraging you to do it. So key things you need to know: save money, or talk to your, employer about their insurance programs, and if fertility treatments are covered, get educated on that. Know your AMH level. Know how urgent it is for you to need to freeze your eggs, or if you don't need to freeze them at all. And just really do some self-reflection on, if you really do want to have kids. And if you do want to have kids, take your power back and, come up with a plan and do everything that you can to preserve your fertility, but not settle on what you want to do in your business or in your career or in your personal life, whether that's traveling, starting a company, etc. Because you really can have it all, but it takes grit, it takes planning, it takes intention, and I believe in you, and you can have it all. So hopefully this is really helpful for y'all. If you have any questions, or if there's anything that I didn't cover that you want to talk more about, or if you've already frozen your eggs, then please drop a comment below and I'll be happy to chat about it. But until next time, I love you, and I'll see you on the next video.